to tonight's video. So in tonight's video we're going to be taking a look at this mini magazine that I got as part of my Retro Gamer subscription. So let's go ahead and get started. So this magazine is called the Mini Shigeru Miyamoto Companion. And down here it says the essential guide to Nintendo's legendary creator. And there is Miyamoto along with Star Fox, Paper Mario, Link, Charmander, Super Mario in his cart, Pikmin, Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Yoshi, Samus, and then a very large Super Mario through the middle. So let's go ahead and open this up to the first page and make sure that I'm in the centre of the frame. Okay, so the first page of this magazine just tells you a little bit about Miyamoto and what is inside of this magazine. So basically in this magazine it goes through the games that Miyamoto was involved with and what his involvement actually was. So was he the designer, the editor, and so forth. And then on the second page we have the contents of all the games that are listed in this magazine. And then around the edge we have some screenshots of some games that are also featured. So on page 7 we have Super Mario Bros. On page 12 we have The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Page 17 is Pokemon Red and Blue. 19 is Pikmin. 21 is The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Page 26 is Super Mario Bros. 3D Land. And page 28 is Splatoon. So let's go ahead and turn this over. And again, every time I turn this page, the magazine moves slightly. Okay, so first up, in 1979, we had an arcade game called Sheriff, and he was the artist for this game. It says the first notable game that Miyamoto was involved with plays like a cross between Taito Space Invaders and Gunfight. And at the top we have some screenshots from the game. And then again in 1979 we have another arcade game called Radarscope, and he was the designer for this game. And it says designed by Miyamoto, Radarscope is a perfectly serviceable take on the popular arcade hit Space Invaders, and it features a rather neat perspective trick that would appear in later gems like Juno First. And again a screenshot, and it says you won't remember the gameplay but you will remember the colourful explosions, and right there is one of the colourful explosions. In 1981 it says the birth of two icons, so Donkey Kong and Super Mario, who was actually known as Jumpman back then. This came out in 1981, and again he was the designer for this game. And it says, although Miyamoto came up with Donkey Kong's gameplay mechanics and iconic characters, programming duties were instead handled by Agami Toshinki, a Japanese manufacturer, and I've probably just butchered his name. It says Donkey Kong remains one of the most popular arcade games when it comes to score chasing. Basically, Donkey Kong throws barrels down this course, and you have to jump over them and not get hit. And then in 1982 they released Popeye, which is basically this game, but with characters from Popeye. So we have Popeye, Pluto, and at the top we have Olive Oil. And it says, it wasn't easy, but we caught all of the hearts Olive Oil threw at us. It says this is another early offering for Miyamoto and one of Nintendo's earliest games to feature a license. Again the same concept, he throws something and Popeye has to avoid them. And then in 1984 we had our first console game on the NES, and he was again the designer for this. This is an excellent racer from Miyamoto that allows you to tear around cleverly designed tracks on a dirt bike. And on this game you've got to try and get to the end of the course without burning out your motorbike or your dirt bike. So down here is a temperature gauge, and if that gets too hot you get taken to the side of the course and you have to wait for your motorbike to cool down. And then it says you'll need some decent mastery of your bike to clear this jump. Let's go ahead and turn over to the next page and again level this up. In 1984, we had a game called Duck Hunt on the NES. He was the designer and the director. While we don't condone the shooting of real-life animals, we are partial to the odd bit of digital animal culling. And there's the ducks that you have to shoot, and there's your hound or your dog that helps you. And when you lose, he does actually mock you. You could also get a zapper gun for this game as well. In 1985, Kung Fu was released on the NES. He was again the designer and the director for this. Although Miyamoto is best known for coming up with original game ideas, he is also occasionally converted to the work of others. Kung Fu is actually an early film license, as it's a loose adaptation of Jackie Chan's Wheels on Meals, and there are a couple of screenshots from the game. And again in 1985, Super Mario Bros. Was released on the NES, again designer and director for this game as well. While Mario was already well known thanks to the likes of Donkey Kong, Wrecking Crew and Mario Bros, it was this delightful gem from 1985 that helped turn him into a global phenomenon that he is today. And right here is an underwater level, and I've mentioned before, but I absolutely hate underwater levels, and this one is no exception. It's so hard, I hate them. Okay, so a year later, in 1986, we got The Legend of Zelda on the NES. He was the designer, director and producer. This game was originally released on the Famicom, and it says, while crushingly difficult at times, the first Zelda features a host of hallmark and key gameplay mechanics that would help turn this series into one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. A couple of screenshots and it says, oh, this looks rather foreboding. Oh, sorry, I'm knocking my mic. I'm really close to my mic at the minute, so my whispering is probably really close as well. In 1988, we got Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES, and he was the director for this game, with the true Super Mario Bros. 2 being a little more than ridiculously more difficult set of levels for the original game. It was down to Miyamoto's third Super Mario Bros. Release to help define the genre. And here we have an underground level. Again, I'm not massively keen on underground levels. They're not as bad as the water ones, so they're not too bad. And into a new decade, 1990, and we have one of the best Super Mario games ever released, and that is Super Mario World for the SNES, and he was the producer for this game. And it says, for many gamers this remains the pinnacle of Mario's 2D platforming career, and it's easy to see why. Virtually every aspect of Super Mario World is perfect. And here we have Yoshi trying to eat this mole. Be it a fruit or a foe, Yoshi will eat it, or at least give it a good try. Again in 1990 we have F-Zero for the SNES, and he was again the producer. So we have 3 screenshots and it says, when F-Zero launched with the SNES in 1990, it felt like a revelation for those lucky enough to play it. Okay, centre that up. The franchise maker, a quick look at the biggest gaming franchises that he was involved with. So Donkey Kong, Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, F-Zero, Pokemon, Mario Party, Paper Mario, Super Smash Bros, Mario Kart, Wave Race, Pikmin, Metroid Prime, Star Fox, and Pilot Wings. Pilot Wings on the 3DS was such a great game. So underrated. And talking of Pilot Wings, we have the first offering in 1990 on the SNES. It says, views just didn't get any better than this back in the 16-bit days. And there's a screenshot from the game. Look at the graphics. I just flatten that. Okay, so in 1991, we have The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past for the SNES, and he was the producer for this game. The moment when Link steps into the dark world into an alternative version of Hyrule remains a classic video game twist. Some screenshots, And it says don't fall when fighting Moldor, or you have to work your way back to it. In 1991, we got a game on the Game Boy called Wave Race, and he was the producer for this game. Nobody ever seems to remember this jet ski racer when it brings up, believing the franchise first began with the N64 game. And it says there aren't many 4-player Game Boy games, but this one is worth seeking out. Look at the graphics, it's so green. And in 1992, we got our first Mario Kart game on the SNES. He was the producer, and Super Mario Kart. This game that created a whole new subgenre, Mario and pals took to the road to start in this highly charged racer. A couple of screenshots with Mario and Luigi there. Then in 1993 we got Star Fox for the SNES, and it says the Super FX chip would go on to be used in a variety of other SNES games. And then in 1993 we got a pack of classic Mario games for the SNES, and he was the producer. This pack of classic Mario adventures from the NES is one of the earliest retro compilations to hit home consoles, and it's an example of the remakes being done right. My god, I'm forgetting how to read here. And there's a couple of games. And then it says all-star versions of Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3 eventually received a GBA standalone release. I'm sorry I keep knocking the mic because like I said, I'm so close to it. I'm really hoping it's not too distracting. In 1993 we got a Kirby game called Kirby's Adventure for the NES, and he was the producer for this game. Although Kirby had previously appeared in Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, it was the second entry in the series that marked Miyamoto's first involvement. And then again some screenshots. In 1994, Stunt Race FX for the SNES. He was the producer for this game. It's a real shame that Nintendo never released a Stunt Race FX sequel, as it was great fun. Donkey Kong in 1994 for the Game Boy, and he was the producer for this as well. While it's notable for being the first game to take full advantage of the Super Game Boy, it's the stunning gameplay that makes this a classic. And there's one of the levels. And then, where are we? 1995, we got Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Of course I'm moving this just because, it's already hard enough to centre up because I can hardly see my phone. So this says Yoshi and his multicoloured mates have accidentally ended up in charge of baby Mario, and they've got to reunite him with Luigi, who is unfortunately currently kidnapped by Kamek. And some screenshots. This is again another really good Mario game. And then we have a Game Boy game called Mole Mania that came out in 1996. He was the producer for this as well. Having been released at the time when the Game Boy wasn't getting much attention, Mole Mania tends to be overlooked. I have to keep going off camera and having a drink of water because it's been so hot here in the UK. It's got up to like 33 degrees and it's still boiling now, even though it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's ridiculous. Okay, so we've hit the centre of the magazine, and the middle pages have brought up some absolutely fantastic games. So first up we have Super Mario 64 for the N64 that came out in 1996, and he was the director and the producer for this game. After redefining the 2D platformer with Super Mario Bros. In 1985, Miyamoto did the same thing for 3D 11 years later. There's Mario with his penguin, and another screenshot there. We then have Pilot Wings 64 that came out in 1996. Of course, for the N64, he was the designer for this game. Pilot Wings 64 launched alongside Super Mario 64, and while it wasn't as genre-defining as its groundbreaking peer, it still proved to be an essential game. And then we have Pokemon Red and Blue for the Game Boy, and he was the producer for this. Known as Pocket Monsters in Japan, Game Freak's game is stupidly successful and has become one of the biggest video game franchises. And then one of the best Zelda games of all time, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in 1998. For the N64, he was the designer, director and the producer for this game, and it says, "This is still considered by many to be the best Zelda game ever made." And then a few screenshots right there. Just looking at this magazine really makes me want to go back and play a lot of these games, it really does. Okay, so on the next few pages we've got a lot of games to go through. So first up we have F-Zero X for the N64 that came out in 1998, and he was the producer. And it says, "Everything about Nintendo's sequel was bigger, fast and louder than its predecessor." We then have Super Smash Bros. In 1999 for the N64, and he was the producer. Trust Nintendo to take a traditional genre and add a new spin. Fantastic game, love Super Smash Bros. And again another great game, Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube in 2001, so again a new decade. He was the producer. While criticised on launch for not being a Mario game, as well as the brevity of the main quest, there's actually a lot to love about Luigi's Mansion. I can't imagine anyone criticising this game, it's so good. In 2001 we got our first Pikmin game on the GameCube, and he was the producer. Trust Miyamoto and Nintendo to put a charming spin on the RTS genre. In 1991 Metroid Prime was released for the GameCube, and he was the designer. The best way to experience Metroid Prime today is on the Switch. And the last game on this page, but certainly not the least, is Super Mario Sunshine that came out in 2002 on the GameCube, and he was the producer. Although it's often considered to be one of the weaker 3D Super Mario games, there's still plenty of reasons to play Sunshine. Why are they criticising these two games? They're so good. One of the best Mario games. I keep saying this about Mario games, but Mario Sunshine is a fantastic little game. If you've never played it, which you probably have, definitely give it a go. Okay, let's turn this over to the next page. I think we're getting near the end now. In 2003 we got a Pac-Man game, so Pac-Man Versus. For the GameCube he was the designer and the producer. As you can see, Pac-Man has to be very close by for the ghosts to spot him, so a couple of screenshots. And then we have Donkey Kong Jungle Beat that actually came, well it didn't come, but you could get a set of bongos to play this game. I think I have this game, but I don't have the bongos that you can get. This came out in 2004 on the GameCube, and he was the producer for this. This game seems like a silly idea, but we've seen it convert our most skeptical friends. In 2005 we got Nintendogs on the DS. He was the general producer. Trust Miyamoto to come up with a concept of making you walk a dog and have it be anything but boring. And there's a dog with a hat on there. And then another game that's fantastic, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess on the GameCube and the Wii in 2006, and he was the producer. Though the move away from the cartoonish style of the Wind Waker was celebrated by many fans when Twilight Princess was initially released, some were disappointed that it was effectively a reskinned Ocarina of Time when it finally arrived. Okay. Getting on to some newer games now. Okay, so we have Wii Sports up next in 2006. This is such a fantastic game. So at the top we have bowling, we then have tennis and golf. I absolutely love the baseball on this. This says Wii Sports may have been a simplistic, but it was a pivotal in demonstrating Nintendo's brand new console and the appeal of its unusual motion control scheme. Then in 2006 we have New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, and he was the supervisor. We're not too sure how the supervisor roles work at Nintendo, but the magic of Miyamoto can still be felt in the New Super Mario Bros. And then we have Super Mario Galaxy in 2007 for the Wii. He was the designer and the producer. Love the Super Mario Galaxy games. While Super Mario Sunshine tried to recapture the 3D brilliance of Super Mario 64, it was Super Mario Galaxy that really upped the ante for 3D platforming. And there's some screenshots, of course. Next up, we have the Wii Fit in 2007 for the Wii, and he was the designer. I remember when this came out and it was so hard to get hold of the Wii Fit board. Like, everybody wanted it, but you couldn't get it anywhere. And it says, how do you make exercise fun? Then we have Wii Music in 2008. Of course, for the Wii, he was the designer and the producer. Wii Music arrived at a time when the likes of Guitar Hero and Rock Band had driven rhythm action games to an unprecedented level of success, but Miyamoto's contribution to the genre was surprisingly lackluster. So it obviously didn't do very well. I think I actually have this game. In 2011, we got The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword on the Wii, and he was the general producer. There are some corners of the internet that suggest Skyward Sword is better than the Ocarina of Time. It is a good Legend of Zelda game. And in 2011, we have a 3DS game called Steel Diver. I don't think I've even ever heard of this game, so I definitely don't own it. If you need proof that even legendary game designers like Miyamoto aren't infallible, take a look at Steel Diver. Never heard of it. Okay, let's turn that over. Then we have Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS. He was the general producer, and this came out in 2011. This genuinely brilliant platformer combines the precise platforming of Mario's 2D adventures with the imaginative design of many 3D games. Then in 2012 we have a new Super Mario Bros. U for the Wii U, and he was the general producer. While Mario's first Wii U outing was highly entertaining, there's a definite sense that the new Super Mario Bros. Series was beginning to feel a little too safe. Then we have a couple of screenshots there as well. In 2012, we had Nintendo Land for the Wii U. He was the general producer. This Wii U launch game remains an interesting collection of hits and misses. Then we have Luigi's Mansion 2 in 2013 for the 3DS, and he was the producer. While the original Luigi's Mansion is certainly an enjoyable game, this is a far stronger effort. And then in 2013 we have Pikmin 3 for the Wii U. Again, he was the producer for this as well. While it doesn't enhance on the series like Pikmin 2 did, the third game remains a supremely compelling title that introduces a third playable character and several new Pikmin. Okay. In 2015, we got Super Mario Maker for the Wii U. He was the general producer. And down here it says, sadly, all online services for the original Mario Maker were discontinued in 2024. I didn't actually know that. In 2015, we got Splatoon for the Wii U. He was again the general producer. Despite generating some skepticism upon its initial reveal, this was easily the best thing to come from the Nintendo during the turbulent Wii U era. I don't know why all the hate for the Wii U. There's some fantastic games on it. I actually love my Wii U console. In 2016, we got Star Fox Zero for the Wii U. Supervising director and producer. Developed in collaboration with Platinum Games, this was the first Star Fox game to hit a home console in over a decade. We then have The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in 2017 for the Wii U and the Switch, and he was the general producer. I didn't actually pick this up on my Wii U because I ended up getting it on my Switch. I bet you the Wii U version is actually quite expensive because I bet many people didn't pick it up because obviously it did get released as the release title when the Switch came out. Multiple delays ensured that this game, once heralded as a potential saviour for the Wii U, is now best remembered for launching the Switch. In 2017 we got Star Fox 2 on the SNES, and he was the producer. Despite being finished in the mid-90s, this Super FX2 game was shelved as Nintendo didn't like the way it looked compared to other contemporary 3D games. And then in 2023 we got Super Mario Bros. Wonder for the Switch, and he was a supervisor. This was definitely a different spin on Super Mario games. Is that pipe supposed to be wiggling along like a worm? Let's hope so. Okay, on to our last pages now. Okay, so the last few pages, we have this collector's checklist. So it's got all of the games that we just went through in this magazine, and you can tick off whether you own them or not. So like Super Mario Bros, Breath of the Wild, F-Zero, A Link to the Past, Mario 64, Nintendogs, Nintendo Land, and Super Mario Bros 2. And then that is the last page in the magazine. So that was the mini Shigeru Miyamoto Companion, but before I go I did just want to show you something else. Okay, so I did just want to show you this. This book is called How Nintendo Conquered America, and this basically just goes into depth about Nintendo's history, and there's a lot about Miyamoto as well. So I thought if you enjoyed that magazine, you might enjoy this book. I think I picked this up on Amazon, it wasn't too expensive. And yeah, it's just a really good read. Even if you don't really like reading, if you like gaming, I think you will enjoy this. So yeah, that's the end of the video. And as always, I want to thank you all so much for watching. And until my next video, good night everybody. Good night.